In Unit 7, we're now going to start looking at a concept called arrays and how those are used in Python. So in Lesson 1, our goal is to just being able to understand an array, how it's stored in memory, what they look like if you try to print them, the simple basics so that we can use them at a higher level in later lessons. By the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to create an array in Python. You'll be able to output an array in Python, and you'll be able to output a single element of an array in Python. So to start, what is an array? So to kind of think about the application of arrays, I want to give you an example of where they might be used. So think about if I wanted to keep track of all of the test scores in this class. So I keep all of my test scores in Skyward, but say I had a computer program I had written that would actually hold all of these test scores, and then I could work with and manipulate those test scores and find data from them. An efficient way to keep track of these test scores would not be to have 16 different variables. So think there are 16 of you in this class. I would have to have 16 variables for test 1, 16 variables for test 2, 16 variables for test 3, so on and so forth. That's not very efficient, and it's a lot of variables to keep track of. When you have lists of items like this, so linked items that should be grouped together, that's when arrays are really, really helpful. And they're just an easier way to save information in memory and an easier way to then work with that data so you don't have to keep track of 16 variables per person per test or something like that. So arrays are the solution to this challenge because having 16 variables per test would be very, very tedious and it'd be very challenging for me to keep track of. So an array is simply an ordered list of similar items. So they have little boxes, is how I think of it anyways. They have little boxes in the array, and you can have as many items as you want in an array. You're not limited to say 5 or 10 or whatever. But arrays allow us to hold grouped items and related items in a specific order in memory. So think of it as, little pockets in memory that are all saved in one array. So what happens is we can then create one array and then access each index of that array because we can access, it's kind of like accessing the index of a string. You can access each index and the value saved in that part of the array. So arrays are just ordered lists of similar items, and we'll start working with them today. So what would an array of student test scores look like? It would look like this below. So what I would do is I would create maybe an array called student, and then I would save the numbers inside of each different spot in that array, inside of that list. So what happens is each different item in the array represents one test score. So the first index there would represent this test score for student 1, the test score for student 2, student 3, student 4, student 5, so on and so forth. So what happens is this is an array with length 6. You can see it has index locations of 0 through 5, so these work just like strings, which is great for consistency. And what I could do is I could say access, index 0, and that would give me student 1 score. Access index 1, and that would give me student 2 score. And I would be able to access those very, very quickly by just creating one array and accessing the indices. So notice this one has a length of 6 with indexes 1 or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each spot in the array holds one item. It can't hold multiple things. It can hold one, but we can have this array have a length of as long as we'd like. So how do we create arrays? This is our syntax for creating an array. So you can see we have our array name here, just like a variable, equals, and then what happens is inside of square brackets, we list all of the items we want inside of that array separated by commas. So notice the name equals is the same as a variable, but putting items inside, we basically tell the computer that it's an array by putting these square brackets around it. And then we separate those items in here separated by comma. And what your computer will do is item 1, it will save item 1 in index 0. And then at the comma, it will save item 2 in index 1, so on and so forth until it reaches the last item. So your computer can tell just by your list here how long you want your array to be. So next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to do this in Python and show you what it looks like in practice just declaring an array. So you should have Python open. I'm going to do File, New File, or File, sorry, I have the new file, so File, Save As. Then in here, I need to go to my computer science projects. I need to start a new folder for Unit 7. And then I'll do Unit 7, Lesson 1, Array Basics. So here, this is just going to be Unit 7, Lesson 1, Array Basics. We're going to start here by just creating an array and printing it to the screen. I'm going to use the concepts we covered in Unit 6, where we talked about having a definition main. So we're still going to have our definition main here. You're still going to need, main at the very, very bottom to run your program. But what we're going to do here is we're going to create an array. And notice here I'm calling this num array. It just stands for, I'm creating an array that holds numbers. You can name your arrays whatever you'd like. So num array is the actual name of my array. So that's where I'm going to save all of these values. Put my equal sign, and remember these square brackets, and if you can't find the square brackets, they're located next to the P character on your keyboard. We put the items we want saved inside of this array between these brackets separated by comma. So as I type in 5, 5 is being saved in index 0. 9 is being saved in index 1. 6 is being saved in index 2. 12 is being saved in index 3, so on and so forth, all the way up till I get to my final value, which is 17. So this creates an array and gives it 6 values. And then we can make a note here. We'll use indices 0 through 5. Remember, length of 6 means we use indices 0 through 5. Then what we can actually do next is we can actually print a num array or a print an array to the screen. And I want to show you what's going to happen and what that looks like, so we can see that this actually creates an array and not a variable. So I enter down. In order to run my program, I need to actually put that main line in there. Oh. And if we run it, notice how this is what it looks like when it prints. So if I look here, I can see that it is clearly an array. I can see that. I can see that it's printing out just the whole entire thing, because that's what an array does, is it saves a list of values. Then if, say, I were to modify this, just for kicks, it would print that to the screen. So notice that it saves an entire list of values. That's what your array does. So it creates a list of values, and then we can access each indice as we work.